Welcome to today's webinar, Opening the Hidden Chambers of the Heart. Welcome back, everyone who was here last night, and welcome to everyone who's new today. Today, I'm going to do a little overview of what is energy healing, and then we'll have 3 minutes of silence, and then prayer of gratitude, and then a little review of yesterday's session, followed by diving into today's session with lots of great questions that came in. I'll probably spend most of the time working with the questions. It's good to see everyone. Thank you for being here. What is energy healing? Energy healing is this technology. Basically, it's a way of using your attention. Attention is a thing. Attention is a real thing. It's a tool that we have as human beings. Great tool for focusing, but also for activating and enlivening wholeness wherever it focuses. Because the source of creation, the home of everything that exists, is basically a giant ocean of pure awareness. So when we focus our awareness, we're like taking that source material and we're putting it wherever it falls, wherever we choose to apply it. And so what happens at those spots is that wholeness is created. And I mean, the whole system of the body that like we feel pain or discomfort when something's not where it's supposed to be, that whole system is based on bringing awareness, drawing awareness into the area that needs it. Okay. So there are lots of different ways to focus attention. There are a lot of different places to focus attention. Another basic principle of energy healing is rather than focusing on the surface, on the superficial aspects of the symptoms, to use the symptom as a launching point to get down into the seed of the issue. Because when we put our attention on the seed or the cause of the suffering, then we're affecting the root, we're affecting the foundation of that suffering. And it's a very efficient way to do energy healing. It's a very efficient way to heal rather than like putting a Band-Aid on the surface, right? We go underneath. What is the cause? And that requires some refinement. That requires some ability to dive into the subtler layers and the subtler aspects of the like fundamental structure that's behind the physical symptom. So if we have a physical symptom, then there are mental and emotional elements that are behind that are at a deeper, more abstract level. But then even behind the mental and emotional elements, there are even deeper levels because you can go deeper, all the way to infinitely deep. Infinite, we can go all the way down to the source of creation, which is infinite, eternal, absolute. Now, the seeds of suffering, as a general rule, we don't locate seeds of suffering in the absolute. We don't locate them in the source of creation because the source of creation is completely beneficent. It is completely the creator of everything. You could say, well, then did it also create the seeds of suffering? And the answer is, well, yes, probably. yes. In a sense, yes, it does also create the seeds of suffering, but we've kind of dug deeply into that in previous webinars. So today's session is more about the chambers of the heart and how we can use how we can apply awareness through the heart energy center to gain greater facility in the healing process. So that's more the focus today. But in short, because I brought it up, what happens is the source of creation is like a fountainhead of all energy, creativity, intelligence. And yesterday we talked a little bit about these impulses of intelligence that arise from the source of creation that in Vedic terminology are called richas, these impulses of life force that come forward. And the thing is that the source of creation, because it's infinite, it's producing these waves of life force at a rate and in an amount that would tend to blow out the circuits in our physiologies, essentially. So that's why we have nervous systems and senses of perception that are limited in scope. In other words, our systems, our physiologies filter out more than they take in. But it's this filtering out process that actually gives rise to the seeds of suffering, because the principle is that the divine creates humanity as a vehicle for self-knowledge, as a way that the the source of creation can fold in on its own nature to know itself and evolve, essentially. And so our job is to be a point of reference in the material universe for the divine to know itself. And the divine is the whole material universe. So each one of us is this point of reference, and we're looking at the whole universe like that. But also part of our job is to be a pure as we can be, expression of that divine, of that source of creation, intelligence and creativity and energy. So naturally, limits are reached. Naturally, the human physiology has its limits. And there are these moments when we know that our potential is really big and we want to be like living that fullness that we know is our reality, but we find that the flesh is unwilling, right? The body is not fully comfortable carrying that much light in it or that much fullness. And so those moments when the potential to carry the light is present, but the physiology is not completely going along with the game, that's when the seed of suffering is created. It's just at that exact moment that there's a discoordination, there's a lack of coordination between this flow of life force coming from the source of creation and its ability to express itself in the physiology. And because it is your potential, it is our potential as human beings to be vehicles for that light to a degree that I would say is greater than what is commonly communicated to us in our modern world, right? Like the pinnacle of human experience, right? The pinnacle of human achievement is seen in like, you know, famous people that we hold up as examples or something like that. And I'm not saying that those aren't good people. There's all people have their value, obviously, but what is really normal, what is really the full value of human expression is really, really big. It's really a lot bigger than I think our culture would lead us to believe. And so as a result, deep inside, we all know that. Deep inside our hearts, we know what our true potential is. And so it's that potential, it's that seed of, just like there's a seed of suffering, there's also a seed of potential, right? And so it's that seed of potential that is cherished and useful, because we will often compare, a person will often compare whatever their experience is in the moment to that potential. And if it falls short, there's this sense of like, insufficient. I wasn't good enough, worthless, disposable. And that's all those more discordant feelings can come in. And the problem lies when we accept those feelings as forms of self-identification. When we say, well, I'm worthless or I'm not good enough, as soon as that happens, that's when suffering starts. So part of the story is, yes, we recognize, the divine was trying to push forth all this purity and light and power, and I wasn't quite up for the task, and so I fell down or whatever. But at that moment, if it's possible to not self-identify, to not say, well, I fell down because I'm worthless, because I'm insufficient, but instead say, okay, this showed me, this was a good lesson, right? This was a good opportunity for me to see just what is exactly that spot that was insufficient. What was that part that wasn't complete? And how do I address that part that's suffering, the part that's suffering, in such a way as to raise it up, to give it a new shape or a new form so that it can be sufficient the next round, the next time a big wave of purity and intelligence comes from the source of creation. How can I do that? And that's where energy healing comes in, because the change that is required under those circumstances begins on the level of consciousness. It begins with consciousness, and it begins with self-identification as whole, really. Even though maybe some part fell down, some part wasn't good enough, still there's a wholeness of each one of us. We are, because our anchor, our roots are in the source of creation, and the source of creation is whole, and we are expressions of that. It's like the divine is living in this world as human beings, and we are those human beings. It's quite a privilege, right? It's hard. It's hard living in this world isn't so easy, but it is a privilege, and it is the reality. It is the reality that the universe is ushering forth at this time. So let us embrace that reality and let us dive into today's session and see what we can do on the level of the way we use the energies of our body, the subtler energies of our body, to produce effects that support the health of the physiology. Okay, that was a really long that might be the longest introduction to energy healing I've ever given. But I hope you liked it. It was fun. And now we're going to do our 3 minutes of silence. And the whole purpose of the 3 minutes of silence is to give everybody a chance to just quiet down a little bit and get the awareness inside a little bit. For those of you who are really comfortable and proficient with experiencing the source of creation within you, this is the time to have that experience. And for those who aren't, just enjoy the quiet, just blessed peace for 3 minutes. God bless it. And don't mind the time, because I'll let you know when that 3 minutes is up. And then definitely take a minute or so to allow the awareness to slowly come out of that silence, because the more time we give it, the more of the value or the richness or the fullness of that silence comes with us into the material or into the more outward layers of our experience. All right, let's close our eyes. All right. Let's take a few moments before opening the eyes. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. Thank you to everyone in this webinar for being an expression of that. Thank you to the whole for being the whole universe. Thank you to the immeasurably precious and essential bridge of knowledge or wisdom that connects the unmanifest source of creation with the entire field of its expression. Thank you for our webinar time together. May we use our time today efficiently, powerfully, meaningfully, valuably. Thank you, everyone, for being with me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to be the voice of the webinar and to share all this lovely, luscious, wonderful knowledge with all of you. It's a privilege and a pleasure. All right. So what did we talk about yesterday? Well, it was kind of interesting. Most of the session was focused on an exercise, which I will review today for everybody. And the exercise involves working with the energetic chamber of the heart. The title is Opening the Hidden Chambers of the Heart. And when I got the idea for this title, my thought was, well, I realized that love or forms of love, so love, mercy, forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, adoration, recognition, all these different forms come first in the energy healing process. In other words, first, first there's the suffering, but once you recognize, oh, there's the suffering, then the next thing that happens to kind of activate or catalyze the energy healing process is a flow of love. And the love lays down a foundation for you to give yourself permission to heal and to feel safe being as vulnerable as you need to be in order to heal, because we do need to be a bit vulnerable in order to heal, because something that was set in place has to be kind of dismantled a bit, and then a new form come up in its place that's more aligned and like a better expression of divine intention. So the healing process needs that foundation of love. And then it occurred to me that I was noticing a pattern over years of doing energy healing, that different types of love seem to be a foundation for different types of healing. Oh, that was interesting. So then I thought, well, we can only create or produce certain types of love based on what we're familiar with already, and based on what the filter or the physiology is capable of producing. So I thought, well, there are probably infinite ways that the heart can produce these various flavors or types of foundations for energy healing. So that was kind of like the launching point for today's session and yesterday's, which I didn't tell everybody yesterday, but I'm in my review, I always give new information. So there you go. Anyway, the point is that on deeper examination, what I discovered was the heart is a little bit like the brain. This quote comes from a scientific journal article, which I'm going to give all of you guys. And it says, we have long thought that specific thoughts or sensations elicit activity in specific parts of the brain. But this study reveals that structured patterns of activity are excited across nearly the entire brain. That's important. just like the way in which a musical note arises from vibrations occurring along the entire length of a violin string and not just an isolated segment. Anyway, I'll send you the whole article. The point is that the heart is similar. The heart has this big neural network around it, and the physical heart has this big neural. So there's this neural network in the chest area. And when we talk about chambers of the heart, we're really talking about the entire energy field around the heart center. So that's like the whole chest. So the exercise that we worked with yesterday was using energy. We were kind of applying attention and working with the energy of the whole chest area and realizing that each impulse of intelligence, each richa that rises from the source of creation, like a sound wave, which isn't so much a linear form, but more like a bubble, right? A sound wave is produced, it's produced in one spot, and it ripples out in a spherical shape, The impulses of intelligence that are closest to divine expression are closest to perfect spheres. It so happens. And so truth, justice, innocence came up yesterday. What a good one. Love, purity, many beautiful values or qualities of the divine. The divine shows up in, like, we experience divinity so huge, right? Reality so huge that we just experience it in portions. We experience facets of it. These forms. So what happens is the energy field of the chest has this potential to take on a spherical form. And when I say the energy field, I mean all the way from the astral body up through the etheric body. And the way that, because the etheric body is more shaped like a map of the body, it doesn't go into a full sphere, right? The astral body goes into a full sphere. And then the more superficial levels of the physiology kind of accommodate that spherical form. So the exercise began with hands over the heart and feeling the warmth and sweetness of your own love. It's a beautiful exercise. It's very simple. It takes only seconds. I literally do it every day. I wouldn't miss a day, because the feeling of my own consciousness and my own love folding into my own being is extremely nourishing. It's extremely healing and stabilizing. And it does wonderful things for the neural network of the chest. So that's the first part of the exercise, is just getting in there and just feeling what the heart energy feels like. And it's nice to see how beautiful your love is. And it's nice to have a way of using it to nurture yourself and to bring health and wholeness to the organs of the chest area and systems. The second part of the exercise is to take that energy frequency that we experience in the chest area, and with awareness, like in the mind's eye, create it into a sphere. Create a sphere, as perfectly round as you can make it. Because the sphere is the physical material form of wholeness. Spheres. Round. And what we're doing is we're creating an energetic chamber, right? All around the chest. It's an energetic chamber, a spherical chamber. Think of it like the sun or a star or a planet. It has this lovely round shape to it. And it supports, it attracts light energy that is an expression of the divine. It attracts divine light energy. We've created a Create a sphere of energy around the chest, putting the hands on the chest again, and feel your love and see how the love moves around in a space that's like, it's like a sphere whose inner surface, like a bubble whose inner surface is like a mirror. It reflects. It just, everything that's in there just folds in on itself, in on itself, in on itself, like a hall of mirrors, only spherical. It's a way of multiplying anything. And this is the area where light medicines are produced. So to have a nice spherical shape of the energy field in this area, or one person suggested we could have a torus shape, which is a lovely idea, actually. There, it's moving. And when it's moving, the movement itself creates bliss. It's when the suggestion was, oh, can we make it a torus shape? And it kind of is, because the cord of light is running through the center of the body anyway. It's running through the center of that sphere. But when it starts churning, because you know the torus is a moving object, it moves, it rolls in on its own nature. My experience was it felt very intense. There was a part of me that's like, oh, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. So my hat's off to our lovely participant who made that suggestion, because like you're a bigger man than I am there. If you can hold that, how long you can hold that torus shape, I don't know. I was comparing it to learning to play musical instrument, because a lot of times when you do something like that, which is a good thing to do, you have to ask yourself to do things that don't feel 100% normal or natural. And I gave the example that when I finally learned, I was finally given correct instruction on how to manipulate the muscles of my face and head when I play my flute. It doesn't look very glamorous. Like that's what my face has to do in order to get a sound out of the instrument that's fabulous. But it's worth it. Like I am more than happy to make that non-glamorous face when I'm playing my flute, because what comes out of the instrument is glamorous. It is beautiful. And so it's the same thing, right? Make this big. And the thing about learning to play a musical instrument, the thing about learning to be like a really effective energy healer, at least to really effectively heal yourself, is that you'll try something. We'll try something like that, to make a big circle with the energy, make a big bubble with the energy of the chest. And it may be that you can like maintain that experience of that for just a short time. But just like learning to play a musical instrument, when little tiny children come to learn to play, you don't expect them to play for more than maybe 3-4 minutes at a time before you stop them and you talk a little bit, because they can't just sit there and play and play and play. Like half an hour lesson is like ridiculous. They're falling apart and their arms are falling down and they're dropping the instrument on the floor because it's just too much. So, but eventually, right, you get to be a grown up. Like I can log in a 3-hour practice session and be like, yes, like no problem. So it's like that you build up to it. We build up to it. And it's not that we have to build up to it because it's unnatural. It's that we build up to it because we've discovered that this is something that works. This works, but it takes just a little bit of doing. Just like I'm not going to hold my face like this all the time. I'm going to do other things with my face some of the time. But when I'm playing my flute, I'm going to do that because that works. All right. The circle shape in the chest is optimal for housing matrices. Matrices are sacred geometrical forms comprised of astral threads. So astral threads are like the meridians, right? The meridians that run through our body. But these meridians, these threads or channels of energy can form themselves into sacred geometrical patterns. And the sacred geometrical pattern inside that bubble helps give it some definition. It's like, think of the flower of life. Oh, maybe we should add that to the offerings. I'll send you a picture of the flower of life. But remember, the picture I send you is going to be on your computer screen or your cell phone, however you're viewing it, and it'll be flat. And the actual flower of life is It's like multidimensional, right? So in that bubble of the heart energy center is a form comprised of astral threads that is symmetrical, and symmetrical whichever way you turn it, whichever way you look at it, it looks symmetrical. But it does provide points of reference so that the energies that are being worked with, the energies that you work with in the chest area, are they make sense, and they have ways of application. All right, so that's the exercise. Feel your love, yes, and then bring the energy center, after feeling the energy signature of love in the center, bring it into a shape that's like a bubble. And what you'll find is that all the light medicines you produce, all the richas that you entertain will benefit your physiology far more, because they are in a space that you have created that supports their holistic expression, right? Remember, the sphere is an expression of the divine. So holistic expression. All right. Lots of questions came in about the exercise. One really, I'm going to kind of pick up where I left off. Well, let's see. Actually, great question came in this morning. A lady sent in actually 3 questions, but they're all just super 4 questions, super questions. So, is this process varying heart marma shapes going on all the time without us being aware of it, usually filtered out? Yes. So this, I referred yesterday to this energy center as the Mahamarma, big Mahamarma here and here in the chest and there in the gut. So yeah, the shape of the chest area, the energy in the chest area is very, very much responsive to our emotional state. Remember, this is happening on the astral through etheric level. So that includes the emotional level of the physiology and the mental level of the physiology. And in particular, what I found experimenting with this before our webinar was that the emotions, especially the darker emotions, the ones that are more difficult to deal with or less comfortable, will cause contractions in this energy field in the heart. Will almost always spontaneously cause a contraction. And the bringing of light, the bringing of awareness in forms of light medicines and resources from the divine, like say you bring the light of pure truth to bear upon, say you have a feeling. And this was a perfect example because this was last week. I had this feeling in my chest, and it was a feeling of grief. It was a big grief. It was a big rough patch, sort of. And I found that bringing the light of truth into that field of grief that was in my chest, for one thing, the light of truth restructured the shape so that it would expand it again and became more spherical, whereas the grief had caused a big contraction in the chest. But it also shined a light on the grief, because the grief is not a symmetrical form. It was asymmetrical. And looking at the grief from the perspective of symmetry allowed me to see it in perspective and to realize that there was a story behind the grief. So the emotional body is like, oh, I'm feeling this deep grief. What is it? The mental body creates a story behind it. Oh, this person who I love, they're like thinking badly on me or something like that. I found that the exploration in this field of creating these various chambers, and I'm using the word chambers, but what I really mean are modes, okay? Modes of the heart, because it's one chamber, really. And just like that quote that I read you about the brain, it'll resonate in a particular quality or form. That exploring this, I found that the story was not validated. And so it probably definitely had a potential to not be true. But the more there was this little wave back and forth between the grief at the emotional level and the story at the mental level, it was like that was like compactifying the feeling of grief. And it was like creating a foundation for the story to come true. And so when I looked at it from this larger, when I opened up and I looked at the grief from this larger perspective, I realized, oh, actually, that's not even a true story. Like that story is probably not true. And then I reached out to the person who in question, and they didn't get back to me for several days. So then I sat there going, maybe the story is true. But no, no, but it was okay. I reached out to the person, and even just reaching out to them allowed me to feel a more complete the action step. I took to the action step, right? And then I realized, oh, no, there's wholeness there. And that's a really sweet relationship that's been going on for a really long time. And there's nothing damaged in there at all. And sure enough, when they reached back to me, they were like, oh, yeah, it's fine. And I'm like, oh, gosh, great. So, what was the grief? The grief was purification of the heart center in preparation for this. That's what I mean. I kind of knew it. I kind of knew it. And yesterday I referred to the fact that one day I was getting cold. That was all the same day, the same day. So everything was kind of coming in at the same time, and everything healed at the same time too. So it was nice. But anyway, the point is that having the ability to witness our darker feelings from the perspective of this sort of spherical form of processing. This is where we understand our experience, right? We understand at a very visceral level in the heart area, independent of the stories and the thinking and all that. And that having the ability to look at and directly experience those feelings from a point of wholeness allows or puts those darker feelings in perspective. And once they're in perspective, it's really easy to see where the holes are in them. It's really easy to see the parts of them that aren't complete. And from a point or perspective of completion, solutions are gained. Light medicines are produced in the gaps. One of the quotes that I brought up yesterday, but I think it's well worth repeating today, comes from the Christian religion. And it says that in every man, there is a God-shaped hole in their heart. And if it's not filled with God, it gets filled with other things. So it's a kind of a sweet little quote. But the principle there is that that form of wholeness is the God form. And allowing your energy center to take on that form, even for a few seconds a day, will allow that experience to become more and more familiar. And the body will adapt, and the nervous system, the entire neural network around in the heart and chest area will adapt, and it becomes natural. Like at one point, I was going to give you an example of the difference when I played my flute with my face all squinched up versus my face all opened up, and you could hear the difference in the sound. I didn't, because I knew that the audio on the Zoom wouldn't really accommodate it particularly well. But the point that I'm trying to make is that once I realized that when I open my face, I get this beautiful sound out of the instrument, then I don't, it's very, very hard for me to play it the other way. It's very difficult. Now, I mean, I can do it, but it's not comfortable and it's not natural. And it will be the same. Once you've found the God space in your heart area, after a while, it's like you just don't want to go back. It's because it's better. Really, it works better. Everything works better. The production of light medicines is better. It draws in from the cosmos. And I talked about this a little bit yesterday. It draws in cosmic wisdom. The richas are attracted like a magnet to come into this very nice, whole, round, spherical shape. And the richas are so beautiful, and they're so nourishing to life, and they're so filled with resource. And it's like, why not receive that blessing from the divine if you can? All right. Did you say what we are doing? I'm going back to the question. Did you say that what we're doing in this exercise is giving a conscious shape to the etheric body? Yes, and I'm glad I got a chance in today's session to clarify that a little bit, that because the nature of the etheric body is to be a map, an energy map of the physical body, it changes a little bit, but not like full sphere. It doesn't, the etheric body doesn't go full sphere, but the astral body certainly does. The emotional body does. The mental body a little bit less, right? Because the mental body is really the sacred geometry that you can put, the different matrices that can be placed inside the sphere of the heart center and provide context for the mental body to feel grounded and stable and anchored to reality. And so I would say that the mental body is kind of sitting on or sitting in that the anchor of the matrix. And they're all different matrices. And I will put a link to a blog that I have on matrices, and you can see how you can play with different shapes and types of matrices. One of the principles that came up yesterday, I think that's important to say again today, is that the heart takes on different modes or flavors of its nature, different fields of its nature, based on the needs of the moment. So that means whatever laws of nature are prevalent at this moment, what are the dominating laws of nature in each moment, then the heart will take on the shape that accommodates that. When I talked yesterday about how all these laws of nature, how their combinations and permutations change over time. They're patterns. There's like, our ability to do for sequence recognition allows us to see these patterns of how the laws of nature will be different but similar, giving us points of reference. But we live in a time very different now than our ancestors. Further back you go, the more different it is. And we are asked to be more efficient, more powerful, more put together today than we were in the past. Because the challenges that we face today are really unusual. Download for everyone. Just a really beautiful understanding of where the laws of nature have been in the past, where they're going in the future, and what they look like right now. And attuning the nervous system in the chest area to be able to read or understand the nature, these laws of nature in the present moment as concisely and completely as possible. And to do so with reverence. That's important. The reverence is important because the reverence elicits a response of unity. And unity is another divine value, right? Just like our big, beautiful, spherical energy in the chest can hum or resonate with truth or purity or innocence, it can also resonate with unity and reverence. Unity between divinity and humanity. That's the unity. This is what's happening, right? You see what happened. We got a download to see where the laws of nature have been, where they're going, and where they are right now. And immediately the whole system accommodated and brought in reverence to create a moment of unity. Because the laws of nature in this moment are allowing that. They support it. It makes it easy right now, the unity between your divinity and your humanity. And that's a great, deep, deep healer for the ego or sense of self. It's the greatest healer, really the greatest, to be able to accept that this lifetime is the lifetime of the divine living as a human. And how a lot of the little things that we think were, so very important from the human perspective, when seen in the light of divinity kind of driving through its own material creation, through our physiologies and our hearts and minds, it does very much help to put a lot of things in perspective, a lot. including when to be very, very, very careful with yourself and protect your nervous system, and when to be bold and not mind too much about a little discomfort. That's so important for healing. It's so, so important because the healing process involves, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit breaking down and a little bit building up, right? We need to break down what's causing the suffering, what the form that's incomplete or insufficient needs to soften down, and then a form that's more symmetrical, more refined, more rarefied, better able to express the divine rises up. And that can be a little uncomfortable sometimes in the short run. So you need to be able to tell, is this discomfort that I'm feeling simply like the grief that I was feeling last week? Is it simply a temporary condition that I need to move through in order to get to the next space that I'm coming into, which is going to be a better, bigger, more robust, healthier space? Or is this some kind of like awful deterioration that needs to be emergency style handled? That knowledge, that wisdom, it's automatic. At that point, it's automatic. When the range of self is experienced as both divine and human at the same time, as the same thing, essentially, then that becomes very, very easy. It becomes very easy to prioritize and discriminate, to discern out, to kind of tease out what is the right action at any given moment. You can do it. You're doing it. Thank you for joining me for this. Everybody's doing it. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to open up the question box here. Okay. Right. So beautiful point coming in from our lady in California, if she's in California right now. I don't even know where you are right now, my love, but because I know you're traveling around quite a bit. But her point is sound comes first. That frequency then increases, and the frequencies of sound become light. Yes. And the light are like energy signatures. The light comes in the forms of these energy signatures. Thank you for that beautiful point. And I'd like to read your point from last night too, because I just stopped short. I stopped short of it. And it was such a good point. Her point from yesterday is that the shape of the head and the study of the shape of the head, phrenology, goes back sometime, like she thinks the 1800s. Yeah, 1800s. I mean, I think I may have seen even maps maybe earlier than that, as back as far as the 1600s or something. But anyway, that would be something to ask Google, I suppose. But phrenology was this like study of the shape of the head, and there was a means of prediction. It was kind of like a divination that you could predict things about people's personalities and their nature by the shapes of and types of their skull measurements. The head, its tissues, chambers, etc., resonate to frequencies of energies, thoughts, and feelings, etc. Yes, and modern sound science, and I'm really glad she brought this up because this lady studies and applies energy healing through sound science, which is one of the areas I think is really fascinating. As a musician, it's very fascinating to me and absolutely amazing. But anyway, modern sound science recognizes that sound is not waves, e.g., two-dimensional, but rather bubbles, right? And actually, I brought up that point today because I had read your point from last night. So yes, bubbles. And these bubbles will resonate according to the shape that they are bouncing around in. Oh, doesn't that make so much sense? So the form we have assumed as a unique human has its unique resonation in the universe. Oh, what an amazing and beautiful point. Of course, we know that our skulls are close to round, right? They're very, like I would say, of all the bones in the body, the cranium is rather close to a kind of spherical shape. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think that spherical shape allows those frequencies to resonate around inside the brain in a way that supports the frequencies expression as forms of divinity, because the ultimate form of divinity is that perfect sphere. And her point is a response to the article, to the quotes from the article, I assume. And the point in the article is the same point that I think one of the main points that I hope you will take away from today's webinar is that this heart energy center The chambers, the various chambers, are literally the one heart energy center taking on different frequencies or forms of consciousness. And you can take on forms of consciousness that are, there are three different areas. Okay, three different areas. It's very simple. One is relationships, our relationships with other people. For every relationship that you have, there is a unique form that your heart feels that resonates here in the chest area. And when you think of your mother, or you think of your father, or you think of any number of your pets, do you have a pet that you love? You know, there's, each love is different. It's completely unique. It's completely unique and beautiful. And so these are very well defined, generally non-spherical, but very well defined with characteristics and qualities unique unto each of types of love. So the more, in other words, the more people are in your world and the more people that you love, the more variety of chambers or expressions of love you get to enjoy in your life. And of course, human beings have evolved in community for ages upon ages because there's something nourishing in that. There's something dharmic in that. Not to, you know, it's like, it's good to honor and to recognize the value. So there's a big value. There's a big value in community. There's a big value in being able to love people, being able to love people, even if they're incomplete or imperfect or whatever. Who's perfect? The second is our relationship with the Davic forms of creation. So we have people that are on the surface, and of course, people's roots go all the way down to wholeness. So there's a big loves there, lots of big loves in the world. But then there are the type of relationships that we have with the laws of nature. I'm using the word devatas. I'm also using the word laws of nature kind of interchangeably, because these are specified. The laws of nature are specified forms. They are active, initiating energies that give rise to effects, and particularly to the energy healing effect. And so there's a relationship that we have with different laws of nature. And those, like the relationships with humans, but a little more spherical, right? A little more universal in nature. Because the devatas are in the laws of nature are ancient, and they don't really change that much. The laws of nature, the devatas, they tend to stay in their safe space, in their comfortable space. Their physiologies are subtle, but they're also, because they're closer to the source of creation, the non-changing source of creation, they are less changing than people. So that's the second. The third are the types of modes. So these are like modes, okay? There's like a family. When I practice scales, right? There are families of scales. I practice something like 21 scales on each unique pitch of the instrument. And there are all these different families of scales, many, many types of scales. So one family are relationships with people and things and animals and those you love. The second are your relationships with the devatas, or the laws of nature. And the third is your relationship with the forms of the divine, the purest forms of the divine that exist in creation. So truth, purity, innocence, compassion, mercy, forgiveness, gratitude. These are the facets of the divine showing up in their purest form. And we could say, well, are those laws of nature? Well, we could animate them. But when I talk about laws of nature and devatas, I'm talking about forms that are far more dense and well defined, and like limited, far more limited in their scope. Whereas truth, grace is in every particle of creation. Truth is in every particle of creation. These are very, very big, very vast universal forms. And these are the forms that we spent a lot of time talking about them today, haven't we? These are the forms that have the most beneficial effect when in entertained in the heart center. And you can do it because those forms are at your fingertips at all times. And they have a unique impact or effect, not just on the resonation of the energy in the heart center area, but also on all the way into the specific systems and organs and structures, physical structures in the chest area. This is a technology for keeping yourself healthy. You can do it. Beautiful. Okay, let's look at another question. There are questions here and questions here. I'll take one more up here and then we'll go back to this one. So Tibetans call the sphere, oh, there's a name for it. Tibetans call the sphere Tigli. And I hope I pronounced that okay. Tigli, Tig-le. They think it is the closest shape of awareness that is expressed in the physical form. So it's like the shape that awareness takes, right? Just like sound waves are like bubbles. And of course, they're also spherical shapes. Awareness also will do spherical shapes. In fact, I feel that on many accounts, awareness moves very much, very, very similarly to sound waves. Lots in common. The laws of nature, very much in common between the movement of awareness and the movement of sound. Dear Dorothy, why we love some people in our lives so much and we can't explain it, and they awaken us so much love. I believe that this is, do you want to bet this is coming from a mama? Right? Like you just can't prepare for the love that you feel when you're a mom. Gosh. Anyway, I believe that this is past lives connection and soul contracts. And is this whole point of human experience that we don't have to know all the answers? In a way, yes and no on the second part of the question. I'll address that first. Because it's like the low-hanging fruit, right? It's the easier. And that is that we don't have all the answers, but we gain the answers. And it is the transformation from darkness to light, from not knowing to knowing, that is the expressed value of the divine in this world and what we are wired up and created to do. So we're created to not know and then know. Like we're created to have questions, and then we're created to have the questions answered and it makes sense. And when that happens, something happens there, right? It's like a transformation occurs. And it's that transformation is the living embodiment of divinity in our world. It's very beautiful. Thank you for that great question. And it's like, I mean, who dies knowing absolutely everything? Nobody. But in some of the other forms that we take, we know more. And ultimately, the important thing is that we played our part, right? That we engaged in that process, that we participated in that divine process of bringing the light into the darkness at every point. When people come to me with concerns about entities, same thing, right? They're experiencing this thing so dark. And yet it only comes, those experiences come when you personally have the resources to transform that darkness into light. And so it's the process of bringing light to the darkness that is the reason for having the experience in the first place. Anyway, why we love some people so much. Okay, one of the reasons that we love certain people so much is that every one of the people that we know is reflecting our own love back to us. So it's like, ultimately, the divine is, just giving you the example with myself. So the divine is experiencing itself as Dorothy. And in that relationship between the divine and its form, Dorothy, there is love. It's really, really big love. It's really sweet, but it's so big and it's so sweet that I have to experience it in facets. I have to experience it in segments, because if I try to experience it all at once, it's like blowing out the circuits. So what happens is I experience it coming through my husband. I experience it coming through my children. I experience it coming through my grandbaby. I mean, so sweet love. And my friends and everybody, everybody. When a particular person expresses that love to you in a way that illuminates your potential, like it uplifts your sense of who you are. It's like that old saying, when I grow up, I want to be the person my dog thinks I am, right? We've all heard that saying. That's like a meme or something. It's that concept that there's some people who look at you and they see you, your essential nature, in a way greater than you tend to on the day in and day out see yourself, right? We tend to be a little bit critical on ourselves. We tend to be more judgmental with ourselves than with others. These are just general tendencies. Not everybody does. Lol. But anyway, the point is that there will be people, as a general rule, we tend to see other people in a brighter light and be more charitable in our opinions of others than we are with ourselves. So when you have somebody who's your friend or your family or somebody you love, and they see you so big and so bright, and they love you in those terms, they reflect your love back to you in those terms, then when you're with that person, you feel like pretty cool, pretty good, feel like I'm not so bad, I'm kind of nice, actually, right? So there's a tendency to really cherish and value those relationships a lot, because the more a person, and it's the same for us as the lovers, right? If I love you, and in my love for you, I am really, really seeing deep into your essential nature. I'm recognizing you, the essential you, who you really are, and then I'm loving you on that level. Like that love, it activates or awakens that potential in you. And that's a great thing. Pure potential. Here's another one. Pure potential. Your pure potential as a being, right? That essential nature that's so sweet, right there in that bubble. We can put our pure potential in the bubble, and it multiplies it. It multiplies it and it fortifies it, and it supports the ability of your pure potential to really take shape in you as your being and your body. Great question. Yummy question. Thank you. Thank you. Before I go on to more questions up here, I'm going to go into more questions down here. So here's another question. Is what you call energy signature a kind of shape in consciousness? On what level is it perceived? Is it within the etheric? So energy signatures can reside, yes. First part of the question, yes. Energy signatures can reside within any part of consciousness. They are definitely shapes that consciousness takes. Consciousness takes a specific shape. There's an energy signature associated with that shape. I would say the energy signature is like the resonance of pure life force within that shape of consciousness. So it's a really interesting question that applies really nicely to today's topic, right? Because we're talking about the shape of the heart energy center. And when it's different shapes, it's going to the impulses of pure life force that come into the energy center are going to resonate around differently depending on what shape you've got going on of your energy center, which is why I encourage people to give it the shape of God, at least that. Yes, it's a shape of consciousness. On what level is it perceived? That depends on the perceiver, because we all perceive slightly differently depending on the refinement of the senses of perception. But from my perspective, best, easiest, most complete, most reliable way to perceive energy signatures is from the causal level. That means the deepest, that very finest abstract level of consciousness, just before the consciousness flops into the absolute. At that really, really deep level of creation, that's where energy signatures, from my perception, show up the most clearly and the most powerfully. Is it within the etheric? Yeah, it's within. Energy signatures will show up absolutely anywhere within any part of the body, from the finest to the physical. Is it possible or useful to create the conscious balloon shape around the other two Mahamarmas? I'm so glad you asked that question, because I was thinking that last night, actually, when I was falling asleep. I'm like, what if? If so, what would be the effect? So I have to confess, I haven't experimented with that as much because I was really putting a lot of attention on what happens in the heart center. But one of the first things, I'll just give you a little bit that kind of came up for me last night, was that I realized that if the energy spheres around the head and the gut are a little bit smaller in circumference than the heart, you get a shape that is like the shape of a water molecule, H2O, right? Because the H's are small and the O is big, and the O is in the middle, the oxygen molecules in the middle, and the oxygen atoms in the middle, and then you've got two little hydrogen atoms on either side, like that. And that shape becomes a shape, I can't exactly do it with my fingers, but it becomes a shape kind of like that. Can you kind of see that shape? So it's kind of like smaller on the sides and bigger in the middle. And if you can picture for a minute how water molecules slip and slide over each other, right? Because they're shaped in this lovely shape that's kind of like a wave shape, right? And then when they get all together, they make waves. And it occurred to me that shape moves through space and time really, really efficiently. It moves really efficiently. And it is possible. It is possible for those of us who've been looking into the Siddhi program for years upon years, that some refinement of the shape of the energy field of the body would support the ability to move through space and time more efficiently. That was my thought. I know that opens a lot of doors. That opens all kinds of thoughts and ideas. But in any event, I thought I would just put it out there because it's what came. So I think that could be something to look into more detail in the future, because I think it's got a lot of potential. Like a spaceship, right? Like a what do they call it? UFO?
UAP.
UAP? Like a UAP, right? They're shaped kind of like that. And they move through space and time really efficiently. Just a thought. Okay. She had more on her comments that were just like totally amazing. But let's keep going here. Probably a bit off topic. Seems if one creates a sphere for each of the three Mahamarmas, then let them expand and interact with each other. That sounds like a great idea. Then it seems that two additional spheres are created, right? One above the head, Mahamarma, and another below the feet. Might these be related to our soul star and earth star? Yes, I think so. Yes, I absolutely think so. The expansion and spheres from there seem fairly interesting. Yes, yes. So I don't think it's that far off topic. In fact, it's interesting. I read this one, then I read that one, because they're kind of in the same direction. And, I think there's a lot more. I think there's like a huge potential in this whole thing that we could look at even more deeply in upcoming webinars. So let me, roll that around a little bit and see what I come up with. And of course, if any of you come up with anything, let me know. And we can play with this in future webinars. I think there's a lot of potential. Thank you. It's beautiful. But yes, I would say that they're probably related to those other like energy centers above the head and below the feet. Beautiful. What is the difference between contemplating the absolute forms of truth, innocence, grace, etc., and embodying them divinely? Can you do a healing for that? Great question. Yes, let's do that. Because when the pure resonance of divine form, truth, justice, grace, innocence, purity, are entertained, they impact the entertaining of those values impacts the wiring within the nervous system. It impacts experience, right? Because that's an inner experience. So we bring awareness into the heart energy center and the wholeness of that energy center and allow these values. In fact, with a flower of life matrix in there, each node of the flower of life matrix can represent a different divine value. One of them can be purity, and one of them can be innocence and gratitude and mercy and forgiveness and love and truth and justice and purity. Did I say purity? And with the big, full, robust heart energy center overlaid with the flower of life matrix, silence. And the center is pure silence, Brahman. The center is Brahman. So beautiful. Like a Brahmastan in the center. And I can tell you, my awareness just wants to be in that center. All those facets or expressions of divinity are lovely on their own, but the awareness just wants to be in the center. Sort of like the point of administration of all of them. And that experience of wholeness, totality, in the center of the body, very center of the body, the center of the body's energy field, center of the body physically. The coordination between the energies in the heart center at this time and the entire highest wisdom of universal expression, the highest expression of universal wisdom, the highest expression of universal wisdom. The coordination is just absolutely beautiful. It's absolute, it's one, it's one, it's one, it's one, it's one. You are one. We are one. The one is one of all of us, with all of us, in all of us. It's so sweet. It's so good. The experience talks to the body. The experience informs the body. It informs the nervous system. It informs the circulatory system, all the systems, immune system, respiratory system. Of that, it informs them of that highest pure potential. Essential nature, your essential nature. First, your essential nature. Then the pure potential. And the potential is realized almost instantly. And as the potential is realized, there is bliss. There's the bliss of union. It's just so sweet. Just that. May it be an all-time reality. May the body accommodate that experience so completely and so fully that henceforth, that's just your reality. That's just where you live. You live there. May it be. And may every movement and every thought and every action that you take in this world inform the entire creation, not just this world, but the heavens everywhere. Delight in the radiance of your presence. It's really beautiful. Thank you for that question. I know that healing wasn't quite as I don't know. I felt like more of it was on the inside than on the outside, but I hope that we can all review that later and enjoy it even more fully and more deeply. May we review in dream and sleep state in order to really grasp it and to really, really integrate it. There was a lot in there. Thanks for the awesome question. Really appreciate it. When spheres of awareness bunch together, we get a hexagonal shape, right? On the flat 2D, it makes me think of the flower of life matrix. Yes. In the 3D, does it look like a crystalline structure? Yes, it does. with intersecting points of lines, nodes of power, dharma. Yes. This gives you facets and resonates, holding power in an increased capacity. Sound becomes light. Yes. So again, I think there's a lot in that question, but I would say basically yes to all of the question parts of it, straight up, and that we are working with more of a multidimensional, like crystalline type structure, with facets and little chambers that resonate within bigger chambers and can create something like a symphony of energy frequencies or sounds, which can become extremely beautiful, which in a sense, we kind of just did that with our healing set, with the little healing that we did. The water in our cells is structured water in its fourth phase. And this is from memory, H3O2, right? I think. Okay, very good. So yeah, I'm not sure because I didn't study it, but so the memory of water within the cells holds a blueprint. So if we, it probably should means if. So if we imprint the water in our cells with joy, love, gratitude, right, the qualities of the divine, the facets of divinity, the crystalline blueprint has to stay in the collective, both via the nervous system and via the energetic fine vibrations. It's a beautiful point that we can also, that also the waters of the body are impacted by this work and by the way in which we shape ourselves to accommodate the qualities of divinity that reside within us. It absolutely affects the water, like the Dr. Emoto's lovely work. Is there an optimal time of day or night for the heart exercise? No, I hadn't found it. I mean, as you know, my usual recommendation is do these things when you fall asleep at night, but I don't want to give you, 110 things to do when you're falling asleep at night. That would be silly. So, but, I'd say do it when you can. Find a time that works for you. I'm not fussy about it being very particular. The topic is the inner chamber of the heart. It seems that what we are doing is expanding the inner chamber of the heart so that it is not just inner, but expanding outside the body. Is this right? Okay, that's a very good question. When I use the word inner, I was really, first of all, yes, that's correct. We're making a sphere, an energy sphere that's outside the body. So that is correct, outside the body, but not like hugely to the ends of creation, but just, still well within the sort of the field, the astral field. But when I say inner, I mean like subtler. I mean subtler, not necessarily inside inside the body's form. So thank you for that question. My friend from Canada says, hi. Can we ask the divine to send these healings to our kids? Yes. In fact, anytime you do a healing like this that really fundamentally changes the structure of the physiology, deep, deep down, all the way down to the roots, that information and that, I would say, that transformation that you undergo communicates to them. And it communicates to them at a very subtle level, at a very powerful level of their beings. Great question. Would you include the Sanskrit quote? Yes, Tom. Can we include Yo Jagara Kamricha Tom Richa Kamiante? Thank you. And it's a translation. I can see the sphere and I see it half filled with blue light. What is that? So good question. Blue light generally is very, very protective light. Now, part of this will depend on which side you see. You see it half filled. So is it the upper half or the lower half or the right half or the left half or the front half or the back half? Something like that will be an indicator, but blue almost always comes as a protective energy. So what that means is at the moment that you're doing and of course that question was from last night, but the moment that this sweet lady was asking me this question, or it was anonymous. No, it was a lady. It was a lady. She was asking it. She probably just needed a little extra protection at that time. And you provide yourself what you need so that we can adapt, right? Okay, important to keep reminding everyone that the spheres expand in the back as well as the front, including the past and receiving. Thank you. Thank you for suggesting that. Absolutely. Because, yeah, that's important. We don't see back there, so we tend to forget, but it has to be round in the back too. And the stars are on the sky, sending love near the sea. Oh, my lovely one who lives near the sea. Oh, you're so sweet. Yes, and I guess it's getting to be nighttime where you are. Bless you. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining me from all over the world in Croatia and Switzerland and England and many places. Canada, let's not forget our dear northern neighbors in Canada and everyone. And so grateful to be with you at this time and to have this very, very precious time together to explore and really create new ways of understanding and a much more kind of solid to solidify and stabilize our understanding of how the energy in the body works and how we use that energy to produce and to create a context for ourselves to be in optimal health. So may you all enjoy optimal health over the next month until our next webinar. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone. For those of you who are joining me for the workshop, invitations will be going out in the next week or so. And I'm very excited to start that coming up very soon. And I'm send my love to everyone, and we'll see you again, all of you again, very soon. Thank you. Thank you all for being with me. Bye.